All set, Carrie.
Alrighty. Sounding a little to me. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regularly scheduled Warren Town Council meeting. It is Tuesday, July 14th, 2020, and it is a minute after 7. If everybody would raise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If everybody would just stay standing for a moment. I know we're all in Zoom, but if you would stay standing, I'd like to have a moment of silence. We lost a previous member of our planning board, Paul Smith. He was a really good guy. He fought a good fight. He really believed in public service. He was definitely way left of center in his beliefs, even for me. And he knew how to have a really respectful conversation, and he shared his views without judgment of others. And so he passed. And so a moment for Paul Smith. All right. We can start. So generally we start with public comment. As far as I know, nobody has submitted anything in writing. And as of the moment before the meeting started, there was nothing, there was nobody waiting in the wings. So we can get right into interviews. The first, is anybody hearing sort of feedback? Are Haley, Jess, Sandy, are they muted?
We are unmuted now.
Okay, I hear sort of background noise.
I'm picking up it also.
Chat, which just if you mute in the clerk's office maybe, or however many screens you have going. Alrighty, so we start off with interviews. We do have an applicant for the tree commission. We've had that one position open for as long as time. And Ms. Jenny Flanagan has applied. I believe she should be joining us on the phone. If the council has questions, let me just check. There's Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep, got you loud and clear.
So Jenny, we'll let you speak first, and then we'll go around the council for questions. As we do, we start from what is generally my left. If we were sitting in council chambers, so we'll go Councilman DePasquale, then Councilman Heckert, then Councilman Hanley, then Councilman Calenda. But you have the floor to express to us why it is you would like to serve on the tree commission.
Trees are very important for urban landscapes. They're helpful for reducing heat sink issues. It's incredibly important for us to make sure that they're available in all neighborhoods throughout town. Low-income neighborhoods are disproportionately treeless, and I'd like to see that corrected as much as possible, recognizing, of course, that most of those neighborhoods also have a large number of state roads, and so I really want to try to push the state to put as many trees in as possible and try to get the mechanisms going to make sure that the state can put trees on Child Street, Market Street, Metacom, Arlington, etc.
Very well. Councilman DePasquale, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman DePasquale, your vote.
Aye.
Councilman Heckert.
Aye.
Councilman Hanley.
Aye.
And Councilman Calenda.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you very much, Ms. Flanagan. You may notice on the agenda at a later item is about the tree ordinance. And so you will be put to good work.
Okay, good. Good. Thank you very much. And I look forward to being of help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, for your service.
Okay, check that, check that. Acceptance of minutes. We have the June 9th and the July 2nd minutes. If everybody has reviewed them and there are no edits, do we have any motions to accept them?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from, what was it, June 9th, 2020.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilman Hanley, a second by Councilman Heckert. The vote, Councilman DePasquale.
Aye.
Councilman Heckert.
Aye.
Hanley.
Aye.
Kalenda.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes of July 2nd?
Make a motion to accept the minutes from the July 2nd meeting, July 2020.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilman Heckert, a second by Kalenda. Councilman DePasquale.
Aye.
Councilman Heckert.
Aye.
Hanley.
I don't know if I should abstain. I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know if that actually,
You can't vote on it if you weren't.
Yeah.
yeah, I'll abstain from that vote.
And Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The minutes have passed. Next is the consent agenda. There are two items, P1 and P2, which are asterisked and need no discussion or unless somebody would like to pull them.
A motion.
Go ahead, you may want to make a motion, Councilman Heckert.
Okay, Councilman Eckert here. Motion to approve the consent agenda, P1 and P2.
I'll second that.
All right, we've got a motion by Heckert, a second by Hanley. The vote, Councilman DePasquale.
Aye.
Heckert.
Aye.
Hanley.
Aye.
Kalenda.
Aye.
Myself, aye. All right, consent is passed. P3 is a request for a one-day entertainment license from Sherry Wynn of Just Dance at 35 Asylum Road. The date of the event that we had approved in the previous council meeting of July 2nd is August 15th, 2020, rain date August 22nd, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. with the performance starting at 10 a.m. and it's a dance recital. I believe Sherry is on the phone for us to question, and maybe she can just tell us where she's at. I know that there was a process facilitated. Hi, Sherry, can you hear us?
Ms. Cronin, on the application, it says date of event.
Can you hear me?
With a host of feedback. Are you on multiple track there?
No, let me take, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So actually the date we had talked about the date, it was supposed to be August 23rd. That was originally changed from the original request.
Correct. And your rain date was what?
The rain date was the 29th.
Okay, better. So just for a little background information, we did develop a sort of a plan with a number of town department heads, fire, safety, DPW led by Bob Ruley, who put together sort of a COVID plan. Where are we at with that?
Madam Chair, I communicated with Ms. Wynn today. We'll need to have a conference call between the fire chief, police chief, and the DPW director to go over some of the details of her plan, understand what she might need for police detail, what costs DPW might need for trash removal. The fire chief has some questions whether or not there'll be a EMT necessary. So we're going to try to have that call tomorrow, possibly. I know Ms. Wynn is going out of town on Thursday. So I would recommend that any approval you give be conditioned on the respective department heads and chiefs signing off on the plan.
All right. Do any of the council have questions for Ms. Wynn?
I don't have a question for Ms. Nguyen. I have a question for the department heads. Do we really believe that this is a crowd that needs a police detail? That's a rather large expense.
Well, the only concern is the number of people that Ms. Nguyen anticipates having throughout the day. And there's going to be parking issues because the beach is open and other people are going to be using the park. So again, we haven't fine-tuned all that. We haven't had a chance to talk to Ms. Nguyen, but that is something that we have on the agenda for discussion.
The beach, this is on Asylum Road. This is the Hugh Cole Pavilion, isn't it?
Now, we had approved at this special meeting on July 2nd, the use of Burrs Hill Park for.
Okay, all right. But on the agenda, it's saying 35 Asylum, and I was trying to figure out if that was the Hugh Cole Pavilion or not,
That's
but.
my
That's
home.
her
That's where
address.
she lives.
Oh,
That's her
okay.
address.
Sorry, now the world knows.
That's
That's okay.
okay.
Yeah, so it's, the event would happen at Burrs Hill Park due to COVID. It's not safe to have an event of this nature inside. So the request that was approved was to use Burrs Hill Park, and then ensued the discussion, or this evening we're having the discussion about whether we approve this entertainment license. Everything will have to be contingent upon an appropriate COVID plan. And yes, there likely will need to be a police detail for crowd and rescue possibly on hand. It's August 23rd, a hot day with lots of people dancing and congregating outside in the hot sun. And then any refuse that might build up over the course of a day. So there will be multiple departments needed to support this event. So that is.
I'm confident in our department heads making the decision whether or not they're going to need those services or not. I'm going to make a motion that we approve P3 conditional upon getting the clearances from the appropriate department heads.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right, so Councilman DePasquale, your vote?
Aye.
Councilman Heckert?
Aye.
Councilman Hanley?
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, but with the, the strong caveat that this is a safe and organized event, and that you're not overextending yourself by trying to put on an event like this when it might just blow out of control. So I too trust our department heads for making a good decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Sherry.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Righty, so next we have correspondence. There are a number of items on correspondence. Is there anything that anybody would like to pull out and
I'd like to pull C11. That's the resignation of Pat Reed. I'd like to, geez, I more than just a letter of thanks. I think we should get her a plaque too. I'd like to make a motion that we accept her with heavy hearts. We accept her resignation, and we also get her a plaque, and possibly when we do get back to full council meetings, maybe have her come in and we can present the plaque at that time.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Something similar that we did when the chairman of the zoning board just recently retired. I think it's more than appropriate that we bring these folks into council chambers and give them their just due. I mean, give them their opportunity that we can thank them in person. So I'm going to second that motion by Councilman Hanley.
All righty, I think that sounds great. Vote. Councilman DePasquale?
Aye.
Councilman Heckert?
Absolutely.
Councilman Hanley?
Aye.
And Kalenda?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Sorry, I'm multitasking. I am responding to in the chat here. I will. I want to just make mention of two items on the correspondence, and I see that Councilman Heckert does as well. Maybe you speak first, Councilman Heckert.
Sure. I'm interested in a little bit of discussion on C7 and C8. Both are essentially complaints about noise. And I'm just wondering how we want to handle these agenda items, because in reading through them, they seem to be valid, and I'd like to have some discussion about what we think we want to do on these.
So Madam President, I also was reading, I actually responded back to one of the individuals about her email chain. And it appears she said that La Piñata may have kind of reduced their sound. The individual who lives on Wilbur Ave, that could be more of a police issue. He actually submitted his recommendation for tweaking our noise ordinance. Without drilling down on the noise ordinance itself, I'm not sure our noise ordinance is the issue. It may just be to ramp up a little more police presence. And I'm sure Chief Borges would see to that being done. But with that said, I think, yeah, those two letters should be addressed.
I looked into Pawtucket's noise ordinance, and it's close to ours, but the decimal level, our decibel levels are higher. On average, probably about 5. In Pawtucket's, there's 2 measurements. One is during the hours up to 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is 1 decibel level, and then after 10 p.m. it drops down to 5. And I think I wrote it down, but I can't find my paper. But it was very close. It was within 5 decibels of what ours is. So it's, if we did, it would just need a little tweaking. I don't think we've got to rewrite the whole thing, but.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
I don't think any of us want to rewrite the whole noise ordinance. I think it is, it's an enforcement issue. In this particular situation, apparently, this neighbor is playing loud music continuously, like a daily basis almost. And I don't think anyone would deny their neighbor the ability to have a party and play music on occasion. But when I personally dealt with some situations with constant noise, and it's no one should put anybody else their neighbor in that position. It's not fair. So if it's a police issue, sure. If they say they can't measure that decibel level, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think then it becomes, where do we go from there? That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Chief Borges would like to speak. Chief?
Yes, I did some checking on the issues that we have at hand here today. The issue on Long Lane goes back a year or so. We did a check on it in 2018. We actually cited the person for having the noise ordinance up. Since then, we have several complaints. However, all those complaints have been under the noise ordinance, which is 65 during the day from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is 65 decibels. And then from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. goes down to 55. So all the calls that we've had since 2018 that we've gone there, the last one we had was actually June 2001, which was, there was no music playing. The majority of them, there was no music playing. There was only one that was the music was playing, and the music was not very loud. So we had 8 complaints from July 1st, 2019 to July to today. We had 8 complaints, and the officer upon arrival had no music that was playing. 1, the music was not loud, and 1 was reported that was actually lower than our decibels on Long Lane.
Okay. Well, I think everybody has contributed to this. There were 2 letters. One was from a constituent who lives near La Piñata who has issue with the noise from a restaurant. And I think that can be managed just with talking to the restaurant. They seem very amenable to being respectful neighbors. The other issue is, I believe, a neighbor on neighbor issue, and I think that might require a little more sort of mediation. I think it would be appropriate to review the noise ordinance and compare to some other ones, make sure that it's sufficient, and that would be between the manager and the police chief, just to see if they've got enough to work with there. But it seems as though the other issue is maybe a little more of a personal one, that noise is being used as sort of a weapon. So Solicitor, Mr. Solicitor, we can't really make discussion and action here, but we can, this can be managed administratively, and then we can maybe hear back next month.
About what you can do tonight is refer the matter to the town manager so that she can just review it with the chief of police and whoever else she feels she needs to, and then report back. Under the agenda that you have now, it's just correspondence.
Okay. If everybody's comfortable with that, shall we go in that direction?
I'll make a
I'm
motion.
comfortable with that, and I would make that motion to refer these noise complaints, C7 and C8, to the manager, and have her report back to us next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, Councilman Di Pasquale, you're laughing. Do you have something to say?
Very observant.
I can see your face.
I'm looking at our solicitor as he has the universe behind him.
All righty, so we have a motion and a second to refer this to the manager. Vote, Councilman Di Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert.
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Mr. Kalenda, Councilman Kalenda,
Aye.
and I say aye too. All right. Anything else?
Madam President, if I may,
Yep.
circling back on C11, can we have a motion to advertise for the vacancy on that position?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Madam President, the advertisement would be for the second alternate. The first alternate will move up to Ms. Reed's position on the Historic District Commission.
Wouldn't we determine that? That's not in the charter. We say who goes where.
And that would be, and I wouldn't advertise until you have a chance to make that
Okay.
decision.
Well, we
Typically, taking the alternates and move them up to the permanents when there's been an opening.
Can we do it both at the same meeting?
That's, if we just
Yeah.
if we just advertise the position, then we can move one up at the same time we
We've done that in
appoint the other.
We've done in the
That's
past.
correct.
Yeah.
So
so-
I'll-
So we are motioning to advertise for a vacancy on the WVHDC.
Correct.
Second. Brand already seconded it, I think. Yep.
Okay, we are taking a vote now. Councilman Di Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda,
Aye.
and I. So we will advertise. Is there anything else that anybody would like to discuss on correspondence?
That's the only, thanks.
Hearing none, we can move on to old business. Discussion and action regarding amendments to the tree ordinance. This was last discussed in February of 20. I believe that it's time to do a thorough review of the tree ordinance, and we should refer this to all of the appropriate staff, manager, planner, DPW, tree warden, tree commission. Get some language back for next month that we can discuss.
I'll make a motion that we ask the town manager to get the relative parties together and possibly suggest some changes to the tree ordinance.
I'll second that.
Vote, Councilman De Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda,
Aye.
and I say aye. OB2, discussion and action regarding the extension and/or amendment of the town's declaration of state of emergency. At this time, the governor has extended the state of emergency for the state of Rhode Island, and we have just been extending ours to follow along with that guideline.
I don't see the state of emergency being cleared by the governor anytime soon. So I'll make a motion that we continue the declaration until the next monthly meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The vote, Councilman De Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
I vote aye. Okay. New business, NB1, discussion and action regarding flag policy. So,
Let me get comfortable.
I'm sorry.
I'm readjusting, sorry.
Okay. In response to recent events in our country, we had a vote and took action on raising a flag earlier this month. And that really triggered a great discussion and a lot of comment from the public, and revealed the need to have a clear and concise policy. We have in our backup the policy that Bristol created that we could use as somewhat of a guideline, and I think we could pick some of that information and use it ourselves. I think one of the things that was repeatedly expressed to me, as well as I'm sure probably others, was flag etiquette. Councilman De Pasquale and Councilman Kalenda were quick to make note of flag etiquette when we made the decision to fly the Black Lives Matter flag in front of Town Hall, and that it would not fly below the American flag, as is etiquette, flag etiquette. But it, to me, brought to light, as I have now read the official military flag etiquette policy, that the town is a little bit wishy-washy on some of the other major points of flag etiquette. So it would be my preference that a policy, however we develop a policy, that it includes some basics to flag etiquette. I know I've discussed this with Manager Michaud, and the town is in process of getting the various flagpoles on town property illuminated sufficiently, because the American flag, if left out 24/7, should be illuminated at night, and that is not happening in front of Town Hall, nor in the town common. Private residents and people showing flags, that's their responsibility, but anywhere in the community on town property that we have a flag flying, if it is to fly 24 hours a day, then it does need to be illuminated. There's also the issue of bringing flags in inclement weather, unless of course they are weatherproof materials. And I don't know what the material is of the flags, the American flags that we're flying right now, if they are in fact weather resistant, but perhaps if they are not, we maybe invest in flags that are weather resistant. So we don't have that issue of just having to bring them in if it's a light or medium rain. Obviously a serious storm would require bringing them in. There's also the issue, and this would be an enforcement issue, and I don't know if the council is interested in going down this road, but there's the enforcement issue to the way that people display and sort of highlight a flag while driving around. apparently it's not appropriate to wear a flag as fashion, as design in a bathing suit and a t-shirt, but that ship has sailed. But there are a number of vehicles that drive around town regularly that have, if you have a flag on a vehicle, it must be on a flagpole and it must fly as a flag is expected to do. And I don't know the correct terminology to describe that, but having
The stars lead the way.
there you go.
The
But
stars lead the way.
flag draped over the back of your truck, like a cover for the back of your the back of your truck, and just sort of hanging out there, that's a little problematic. And whether we want to enforce that or not, but I think just speaking it out loud in a meeting right now is something that I think is important. So we all have this sort of template of Bristol. I don't know if we want to go through it and pick parts of it that we like and parts of it that we don't want to use. If anybody has developed some ideas that they would like to see in a policy. I see Councilman Heckert, your hand is up.
Thank you. I think there are some things about the Bristol policy that we could adopt, but right off the bat, number 2 requires a petition signed by 250 qualified electors of the town, verified by the Board of Canvassers, to get consideration. I think that's way too high a bar. I mean, obviously we're half the town, so maybe you say, well, 125, but in this time of, social distancing and whatnot, I think that would be a challenge to ask somebody to do that. So right there, I think that's a problem. I do think that we should consider requests as they come in. There should be a form that someone fills out and requesting the town council make a consideration and as to why they think it's worth consideration. I mean, I think we can consider those on a case-by-case basis, essentially.
Thank you. I personally don't think there's any need to have signatures. I think that's not really a useful or necessary thing. I think it places a burden on the clerk's office for having to verify them. And I think we are perfectly capable of developing an application process and then vetting an application ourselves as a council. My opinion. Manager Michaud, did you want to speak?
Sure. I just wanted to make one quick point just about the flags on town property. I just wanted to clarify that the flags in front of Town Hall are lit at this time. We had ground-mounted lights that were smashed at one point, but we've replaced them with solar lights that are actually at the top of the poles. And if those work well, then we'll use those in the rest of the public flags that we have on display. But I agree totally that I think that any policy that's adopted, I would recommend that includes a recognition of the code of etiquette, and that I think it's a great idea to do kind of an internal monitoring of our own flags and make sure that we're properly treating all of the flags that are being flown on public property.
Thank you. We could hear from each of you individually and then sort of go through the checkpoints of what we'd like to see on this. Councilman DePasquale, do you have anything you'd like to see or not see on a flag etiquette or a flag policy?
I've been involved in a lot of flag requests. Over the years, I don't think that I'm not going to say that I don't really think that the 250 signatures is that burdensome in one way. On another way, I think that if you just completely leave this to the will of the council, we can find ourselves in situations where we like some things and we don't like others. I think that although it seems to be burdensome, if somebody wanted to raise a flag for a reason they believe in, it will deliver a process that has the support of not even 1% of the town of Warren. So to me, it's a good measure for us to actually validate the request. I mean, but then the flip side, to get on the ballot, you need 50 signatures, so I don't know what the answer is. I do know that this council and other councils I've served on have not come up with good answers. And ultimately, I remember flying the national flag from Portugal, I believe Tree City, USA, and I can't come up with many others. There have been requests over the years. As soon as there's one request for one flag, as we now know, literally the next day you have a request for a different flag. I'm not positive what to do. I just know whatever we do, we all better be prepared to defend and do across the board, because we start saying, and what I don't like, in a way, it says the value of the town. If somebody wants to raise a black flag and somebody wants to raise a white flag, all of a sudden it's going to come down to what the 5 members of the council or 3 members of the council feel is the, where's the language? I was just looking at it. Appropriately reflect the values of the town. I know that that is a pretty large moving definition target that I'm not ready to put my arms around, reflecting the values of the town. Somebody brings a request for a flag that's very important to them for whatever reason it may be. I think it has a lot of weight if there's 250 signatures or 125. So to me, I think that that helps us understand the values of the town.
Thank you. Councilman Kalenda, I see you want to speak. My question would be, though, if we were to approve a number of signatures required for an applicant to be reviewed, the council would then have the opportunity to vote yay or nay on that anyway. So just because somebody received the required number of signatures does not mean that we would have to approve flying that flag if we, as an elected council, decided we did not think it was in the best interest of the town to do so.
Correct, but it shows due process on their part, and it shows a validation of their cause with the beliefs and support of other people that feel the same. And I don't know if this sounds harsh or not, but it reduces and removes whims. It reduces and removes somebody who wants to just fly, a bandana. Sure, it's up to us, but every month, I think it speaks volumes in regards to how we're going to handle with something that we take very seriously. To me, it's the first step of being taken seriously. I'm not going to go on. I think I made enough a good enough example.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to finish with this particular thought, then if a person in town, say, wanted to fly the breast cancer awareness flag for the breast cancer month, which is, I forget which month it is.
October.
Thank you. There are certain flags that have more of that are nationally recognized. So I'm just putting that out there. Councilman Kalenda.
So thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I don't mind waiting till the end to speak as usual, but given the opportunity, I'd like to throw a couple of things the solicitor's way. And I'm wondering is it really necessary for us to come up with this policy this evening, or should we be taking a step back, doing our due diligence and making sure, I am going with Councilman Di Pasquale, that we check all the boxes, we cross all the Ts, we dot all the Is, and we make sure we get it right. Tony, if I may, will the landmark case from 1978, the NSPA versus Skokie, Illinois, when the National Socialist Party of America sued Skokie, Illinois for being able to fly their flag, are we going down this rabbit hole, or is there a way that we can avoid this?
Well, actually, I think the case that was cited in the Bristol petition, Shirtley versus Boston, is the one that controls here. And the statement in there is correct and accurate. Ultimately, whatever flag flies is up to the town council. It seems to me that you can put any flag up there that you want, so long as you comply with Title IV of the United States Code, Section 7. That's the position and manner of display of the U.S. flag, and that's actually the formal statute that governs these things. And it's been said, basically the comments tonight adhere to sections A through G of that law. And the only reason I say that is because you can certainly have a policy for this. And, it depends on what you want to do. If you don't have a policy, you still have the authority to determine what flags fly on town flagpoles, so long as it complies with state and federal law on the display of pennants. So this is a true policy consideration by the town council. You don't need a policy, but you can have a policy. But once you have that policy, you have to adhere to the policy, because then if there's a deviation later on, that could lead to a lawsuit. I hope I answered your question.
You did, thank you. So circling back, Madam President, what I'm in support of, because I was speaking to a lot of folks between the time the BLM flag went up in our meeting, some folks are really intent on, they'd only like to see 3 flags flown in front of the town hall, the American flag, the POW flag, and the state flag. And I was asked if I could present that message to the council tonight, and I told them I would share their concerns. Where I'm leaning towards is, and the council can be involved, but having a committee get together and create and make sure, if we're going to come up with a policy, it is an absolute Chinese wall boarded up where we're not going to get ourselves in trouble, and make sure that the appropriate flags are flown. I'm not so much concerned about the logistics of whether or not there's a light there or if it's a size right. That stuff is to low-hanging fruit that we can police later. I want to make sure that we are rock solid and we are unified in whatever policy that we come up with. So again, we have different committees in town, maybe picking some of the individuals that serve on either the honor roll committee or zoning or planning, putting them together with other members of the council and taking pieces of Bristol's policy. I'm not sure where I land on the signature thing. I'm a big fan of signatures are used to get individuals or matters on a ballot. I don't know if it's necessary for you to get signatures to raise a flag, but if that's where the policy goes, then fine. But I'm just not sure, do we need to do this evening?
Would any, Councilman Hanley, would you like to submit an opinion?
Yeah, I have a few things. In Bristol's ordinance, it lists it needs to be a federally recognized flag. Is there a list? Do we know which flags we're actually allowing to go up there? Does anybody know if there's a list of which flags are federally recognized?
May I? I'm looking at section 7 of the United States Code, Title 4, Section 7. And the only flags that are mentioned there are, flags of nations that are allies of the United States. And any flag of a state of the United States, city or town flags, and pennants of societies. That's all that's mentioned there, as well as the, which has special, actually, statutory status, the POW MIA flag, which not only has federal status, but also there's a specific state statute on that also. That's about it.
Yeah, so I would need an answer to that question. If we're gonna allow federally recognized flags, I want to know what flags we would be allowing. And if that's the only ones there are, then that statute would eliminate a lot of, other flags than the ones that Tony just listed, state, local, municipal flags, if we adopted that language.
And I'm sorry, let me just jump in for a second. It does says pennants of societies. And
What does that mean?
I assume that, and I don't know this, and you're asking for a specific question. I don't have the specific answer to that, but that seems pretty broad and would allow for such flags as like the Black Lives Matter. The difficulty that you run into is that there might be some societies that foment hate and things like that. So I can run that down and see if there is such a list. We'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. On the signatures, again, I'm looking at Bristol's and that's where I'm pulling my questions from. And that statement that Joe quoted, where it reflects the values of the town of Warren, I think with the signatures, it at least gives us an idea that's reflecting at least, maybe 250 is too many, but it's at least reflecting the values of the people that signed the petition. So that, we may want to look at knocking down the number, but I do think, that you should have a decent amount of people that want to see that flag flown. The other thing is, what about like local sports teams? Suppose KMS wins the state baseball title. Are we going to allow their flag to go up? And every flag has the chance of offending someone. No matter what the flag stands for, you're going to find people that find it offensive or derogatory. And to me, that's almost an impossible balance to maintain. If we do go with a flag ordinance and allow it, I would probably be leaning, towards those questions I had where I want to know what flags are federally recognized. But personally, I don't think we should fly anything except the town, the state, and the POW flag on any of our polls. That's where I would like to stand. But if we are going to go with a flag ordinance and allow it, we've definitely got to do our due diligence and know exactly what we're approving before we approve it. That's it.
Councilman Hecker.
Well, I agree. It's a sticky wicket, as they say. Obviously, can be very controversial. I've been doing a lot of reading about flag ordinances and policies in different municipalities, and guess what? Nobody's figured it out. There's no easy answer here. Yeah, we could just make a blanket rule which would insulate us essentially by saying we only fly the 3 flags. That keeps us pretty safe. I agree. I mean, that would be the easy button. I'm not sure we want to take that road. As far as Steve's point, no, we certainly do not have to develop this and accept a policy tonight. I think it's just an open discussion. I think these are all good points that people are making. I also struggle with the signatures, especially now in this COVID environment. It's more challenging to get signatures. But I do think that there's room for flying certain flags that we as council people believe are appropriate and represent our values. And I've read about other towns and municipalities that have had split votes. And yes, we could end up with split votes. But essentially, the people of Warren elect us to be counselors and to give good counsel and to take into consideration these things. And I think that's what we're supposed to do as council people. Yeah, you still get the signatures, but ultimately we make the decision. I'm not sure how else you would do that. Although I did find in the city of Boston, there's a town management commission that manages town properties where flags are flown, and requests are sent to them, and their commissioner actually kind of makes the decision. I thought that was interesting. So there's a wide gamut of ways that people treat these things, but I would be interested in delving further into it and actually coming up with a policy. I think it's important. Thank you.
Okay, so we're kind of all over the place with this as far as I don't believe we are going to end this discussion this evening with a set policy. It seems like we're a little too far out there. I know that personally the number 6 on the Bristol policy is the one that is most important to me, that the flags to be flown are deemed to be, no flags would be flown that would deem to be inappropriate and offensive in nature. And I know that Councilman Hanley just said it's hard to know what might offend one, might really impress and make another feel good. So that's difficult. But they also go on to say those supporting discrimination or prejudice. That's an easier one to define and to debate from a flag. Flags in support of a politician or a political party, that's a no-brainer. But in that, in saying that a politician or a political party, there are flags that may not have originally been created to attach to a political party, but in a political party has sort of adopted and appropriated that flag to represent them. And that would, in my opinion, sort of disqualify. Flags supporting a particular religious denomination, or that would be understood as constituting an establishment of religion under applicable court precedent. So I think those are, aside from the first one, inappropriate and offensive in nature. I think we could figure that out ourselves. I think there's some very clear cut. I think we could probably all agree on what was offensive and inappropriate on a very literal basis, knowing that some things like a Black Lives Matter flag might be construed as offensive to some. But that said, do we want to sort of put this to the manager maybe to look at the, to sort of consider the notes from this evening's discussion and put together a little bit more of a framework that we can go at? The notion of the boards and the commissions, that seems sort of outside the realm of their place and how to pull people together and get them to discuss, you know, if you have one from each, that seems, then we have to decide who it is that we're going to choose and whatnot. I think we can manage this ourselves. Councilman Kalenda, did you want to?
Yeah, if I may, I'm sorry. Is that better? Does my sound better?
Yes.
Thank you. If I may make a suggestion, you brought up some great points. John, you did, Brant, Joe. We even got some great guidance from the solicitor. How about we each have a little bit of a homework assignment? We send what we feel is important to us for the policy, and we shoot it over to the manager. and have the manager and the solicitor put their two thinking caps together and see if they can come up with, something that they can bring back to us.
I'll second that. It's exactly what I was gonna say.
Sorry, I beat you to it, Joe.
Hey, you
I
said
like
the
it.
right thing.
Let's vote on that. Councilman De Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Hecker,
I,
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda,
Aye,
and I vote aye. Well done, guys. Thanks.
thank you. Sorry to give you more work, Tony.
Can I be heard for just a second, please?
You may.
Okay, just one thing that I would ask you to consider when you're putting your thoughts together is also the item number 3, which is the duration that the flag should be flown. So obviously that decision is going to be up to you, but just if you could put a little thought to that, and when you send your thoughts over, possibly include your thoughts about that item as well. And that also leads to, at the last meeting, it was discussed that at tonight's meeting, you would decide the duration that the Black Lives Matter flag would remain at Town Hall.
Yes, I was just going to make mention of that, Madam
Okay.
President.
Thank you.
Yes, we do need to make that decision. If there are thoughts from the council, I know the direction that I'm going in. Councilman De Pasquale, do you have an opinion?
I really don't. I mean, we have nothing set in stone. We have no policy, although we were preparing ourselves to discuss that issue tonight, specifically the time frame. I'm not sure. What's everybody else's feelings, really? I don't know.
Let's just go around as we do. Councilman Hecker?
well, I think typically, municipalities fly these flags for a month. And in some ways that might be appropriate because it's kind of in line with what most towns and municipalities do. That being said, the Black Lives Matter movement needs to go on for a long time. That being said, I'm not sure we can fly that flag indefinitely. I think I'm not sure about that either. So I would lean towards a shorter duration.
Councilman Hanley?
In the flag policy, I mean, if we do go that route, I would be looking at a 30-day limit on flying of a flag. You can have certain months. So I would say 30 days from the date it was allowed would be when it should come down.
And Councilman Kalenda?
I'm kind of shorten it up a little bit, and I'm going to suggest to the other members that I think the end of the month is more than appropriate. And then we can have a clean slate moving forward. I know the flag went up this past week, and I don't think the end of the month is unreasonable. I think taking it down at the end of July is just fine. I think we've shown our support, and we were there in support of when the BLM flag went up. So I feel the end of the July is fine.
I'll speak last. When we discussed, when we had our special meeting, I sort of came out of it thinking that we agreed to fly it for one full month. So, and then it became clear that we decided we would discuss it at this meeting. So, and we also did approve, we discussed and voted to fly it for the entire month of February during Black History Month. It would be my preference that we fly it for a full month now and then just put it on the books as we voted for the month of February, unless we, I guess we could overrule ourselves at some point, but that would be my preference. So do we have a motion for?
I'll make a, go ahead, Joe.
Well, in a way, we're not necessarily setting a precedence, but we're kind of coming across across the board on this again. We share some of the same thoughts, but in other ways, I'm not positive how we should regulate what we've already done. So probably it could just stay up and there'd be no harm, no foul. I also think that if we were to take it down, we've shown our position, and since we have no policy, there's no harm, no foul. Unfortunately, I was unable to find anyone that was in charge when we had the Portuguese flag raised. That actually, we had the ambassador from Portugal, and Chief Borges was at the ceremony with me back then. It was probably 5 years ago. I don't remember the duration that that flag was up. I do know that we have done that. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily shying away from any criticism at all. It's out there. That's not where I'm coming from. I just feel like we have nothing right now. So whatever we do is completely up to us, and there's nothing to support it or detract from it. So it's really up to the majority.
Madam President, if I may just add one more thing.
You may.
Thank you. If we want to take something into consideration, we can use this as a frame of reference. When a flag is flown at half-mast, it's done so in respect of a fallen individual, either a head of state, police officers, firefighters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The protocols that surround that determine on whatever the position was. So for a sitting president, 30 days, and I think for dignitaries from other countries, I think it's 7, and then it kind of gets shorter and shorter and shorter. Goes from 30 to 7 to 3 to a 24-hour period. So that's where I was kind of settling on the 14 days was kind of a split down the middle. So you can take that for what it's worth, and kind of when we fly and when we don't fly a flag.
Again, that's great food for thought. As for the decision tonight, I don't know.
I'm going to go ahead and motion that we leave the Black Lives Matter flag up for 30 days from the day it was raised, which I believe was on the 10th July. Could be wrong, but I believe that was the day. And that we also put that flag up during the month of February for ongoing. That's my motion.
You already have that. You already have the month of February from the special meeting.
Okay, I wasn't aware that we had actually done that, but
We voted that. That was there was a motion and a second and a vote, and that was passed unanimously.
then I'll amend my motion to fly the Black Lives Matter flag for 30 days from when it was raised on July 10th.
I'll second that. Do we have a vote? So Councilman DePasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Hackert. Oh, sorry, I went out of order. Councilman,
Okay.
I'll vote aye.
okay, and Councilman Kalenda,
Yep.
Aye.
and I vote aye. Sorry, I'm in my screen, the motion passes. In my screen, Councilman Hanley is on the left, and it messes me up every time. All right, thank you. That was good. So we may move on to NB2, and this is discussion and action regarding liquor license fees. So a local business owner reached out to Councilman DePasquale about a request or a question about a rebate or some sort of forgiveness on liquor license fees due to COVID and not being able to be open. And is the town interested in offering any sort of forgiveness for fees? I know I would say that going backwards and, issuing refund checks seems like a real nightmare, and it would have to be equal across the board, and how would that happen? And so then going forward to the next cycle, would there be some algorithm that was based on days that you couldn't be open, or would it be days and then look at the date that you could be open, and did you decide to be open? I think it would be, I think that the notion of trying to get a formula that fits all licensees, if we are just looking at beer, wine, and liquor, I think that, in my opinion, a good thing to do would be to give some sort of gesture of goodwill and support to our small businesses, and offer some sort of discount off of the next round of permitting, and or relief from the advertising fee. You know, different businesses in town, some businesses are doing better than ever. You know, some of package stores, liquor stores are seeing a real boon in business. But other businesses, food and alcohol-based businesses are struggling. So your thoughts?
All right, since this was brought to my attention, I agree. I think that it should come off of the next cycle. I think it should be liquor licenses and restaurants. I think everything else, the fees are pretty nominal. I don't think we have a game room in town. And if it's a yearly license, it should be reduced by 3 months. So
25%.
yeah. And I think that it should be simple to do, because it would be coming off of next time. And that's the position that was requested of me. And upon looking at all of the other licenses, I appreciate that they, everything's here, but I don't think that that, again, they're nominal. So that's my position. I put that in the form of a motion.
Can we do that now, or do we have to do that at the budget cycle?
Well, we could do it now because we're not changing the cost. That would all stay the same. I think, well, I guess this would all rely on Anthony, but what this reminds me of is in the past, we had a few structures that had been torn down, and some of the tax properties had still been taxed. So we didn't give them a rebate, we took it off of the future. I think in the past, there was a situation, we had also, there was a license again that was paid for, but there was a confusion. My memory isn't perfect. Mr. DeSisto is here. He was a solicitor in the past. He can answer for himself, but my memory serves me that it was cleaner to do a reduction in the future. Anthony?
Well, if I may, and if we analogize it to taxes, that's exactly what happens. When someone is successful in a tax appeal, the standard treatment is to abate their taxes in the next fiscal year. In this instance, if you're proposing a rebate on the liquor license fee, that would happen in December when they pay, if that's the way you go. And to me, that is not a budgeting matter. It would be handled like an abatement for taxation, which you guys do on a monthly basis for the abatements. That's the way it would go. So you'd be giving them credit on their next fee for what happened this year.
And we could package the loss and pass that on to the state if there's any recovery.
No,
What do you mean, no?
no, that's a local fee.
But it's an effect of the COVID. And isn't there going to be a relief fund? That for potential damages to municipalities?
Maybe.
All right. That's what I was,
They've been pretty cheap or stingy with the passing out of the COVID coverage. So I doubt they're going to be interested in covering our decided fee reductions. It's a nice thought, but I don't see that happening. I'm just doing a little, napkin math here. So a BV restaurant full license at $1,025 a year at 25% off or reduction, or that would be giving them $256.25 back. We have 28 of those. So 256.25 times 28. So that's $7,175 right there. And then the class BVL, we have one of those, and that's $93.75. And then the class C, that we have one bar, full bar, that's Jack's, and the 25%, that's $150. And then the clubs, there's 5 clubs, and that's times 5, so that's another $750.
actually, Jack should be higher. They've just been allowed to open. I think, I guess I don't know, whatever the math is, yeah.
Yeah, so if we are going to be fair across the board, and I'm doing math on my phone right here, 50 and then 750. John, you usually do this. You're much better at this.
Yeah, my dog's been bugging me, so I'm a little distracted.
I let my dog out and back in during all of this. Okay, so I get $8,168.75 that we would be giving in rebates or forgiveness off of the next round of permits. So that's a chunk of change.
Can would it be appropriate to get a more solid figure before we actually decide on this? We could look at this next month when maybe the assessor can take a look at these licenses and come up with a total figure. Just so we know what we're looking at instead of shooting from the hip. Go ahead.
I second that motion.
I just also want to say, we are going to see a reduction in our revenue. I mean, you look at, there was an item on our correspondence tonight regarding the 1% restaurant tax, which is down significantly this fiscal year. So, we have to take all these things into consideration. That's important. So, but.
Yeah, but if we're not getting taxes, they're not, and you know this better than anyone. If we're not getting a tax back from the town, they're not doing a business. And even though, whatever, I got $35 from my insurance company, it didn't pay my rent, but I cashed the check. So I think it goes a long way in showing the support physically for our businesses. But I do agree with you, if that is a motion to have something finalized for next month.
Councilman Kalenda,
Put
you
that
want
in front of a motion.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Joe, when this business owner came to you, were they looking for immediate relief or were they just asking for the relief, in a generalization?
It wasn't, and they didn't want it out of our pocket. They just, they're looking at exactly as we discussed. They weren't looking for $200 to get them through. They were just looking for whatever could help in the long term would be appreciated.
Okay, because there are some businesses that are looking at that, $200 as whether or not they keep the lights on or not. So.
Right. The request didn't come in as like an emergency.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam President.
I just have one thing to add, and I like the idea of getting the hard numbers with the way the motion is. But so this would only be for existing license holders. If somebody opens up in November they would still pay the full fee?
Yes.
Okay,
I mean, my opinion, yes, they
Yep.
weren't.
okay.
And I think this is a feel-good measure for our businesses.
Yeah, as we're discussing this, I'm getting some documents as far as the number of licenses outside dining with alcohol and outside dining without alcohol. I think that, my napkin math was a ballpark. So yes, I think we do need to get some solid numbers from the tax assessor to see what we're talking about. And I would request that we get it done 3 different ways, that we get it at, say, a 10%, a 15%, and a 25% forgiveness, just so we know where we are. And then we can finish the discussion next month and decide, what is an acceptable and appropriate gesture of gratitude and help to our small businesses. Our restaurants and dining establishments and the revenue we generate through food and beverage sales is hugely meaningful to our local economy. But the food and beverage industry has gotten the lion's share of focus and sort of recognition and support and whatnot, rightfully so. But there are many other small businesses in town that have sell a variety of other type of products and services. And so I think we need to be very mindful that we are giving this gesture of sort of support to a certain group of businesses, that we're not excluding others. And I am not suggesting that we do this across the board to all businesses, but this is something that excludes other types of businesses. So if we have a motion to have our tax assessor come up with some figures for us, we can decide next month.
Actually, I'd like to ask Mr. Heckert, since I seconded the motion, to look at the percentages for all of our fees then. And we can have those numbers in front of us for next month as well.
Yes, I would amend my motion to that degree. Since it's being looked at, we should look at it across the board, so.
Second.
All righty, we will vote. Councilman DePasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda, and
You're
Councilman.
muted, Steve.
You're muted.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Is that an aye from you?
Aye, yes.
Okay, I vote aye. So the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Carrie, I just want to ask one question, and this is totally out of curiosity. I'm looking at all of the numbers on this sheet, and there's one number that sticks out that's driving me crazy. Where the heck did 126 come from for the bowling alley fee? It's not 125, it's not 130, it's not 120, it's 126. All the other numbers are nice round numbers.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that was, does that number correlate to like a spare or a strike or something?
I like nice round numbers, and that one's sticking in my craw, so.
Yeah, okay, well, maybe we'll get an answer on that one too. Good eye. All right, NB3, discussion and action regarding motor vehicle tax billing, due date and grace period. Is Chris, are you there?
I am here. How are you?
So you want to make a recommendation for us on this one?
Sure. So as you all may know, Gina Raimondo has proposed to change the legislation for motor vehicles to in regards to the phase out. So that hasn't been heard. We're hoping that gets heard, or a decision is made in the end of August, we're hearing. So right now we can only send bills out based on current legislation. If we were to go ahead and do that, and legislation was changed then at the end of August, we would have to abate our motor vehicle roll and send new bills out, which would just cause a headache. So what we're hoping to do, and most towns in Rhode Island are doing this, just about all but a handful, is delay sending out the motor vehicle bills once we have a decision, which hopefully will be at the end of August. And then we'll get those out hopefully sometime in mid-September, if all goes well, and collect, maybe at the end of September for those motor vehicle bills, in one shot with the correct amount billed to everybody.
That makes sense. Does anybody have any questions for Mr.
No.
Leva?
I think that makes sense. I mean, we don't, how come we don't want to send somebody a bill when we don't know what they owe us? I would make a motion that we extend the due date and the grace period. What was the due date Mr. Layden suggested?
So, if I may, I think we'll have a better, so this is the direction that I think we should go in, and I discussed this with Fung as well, and so I think it's the direction. I think we should have hoping a better idea in August. Do you think it would make sense to maybe come up with a date in August that would work for? Because I don't know that I can give you an exact date on when we can mail the bills if the legislation, or if the budget isn't approved with the changes that are suggested.
When do they normally go out, Chris?
With the real estate bill, so they would have.
And I just
gone
got
out
mine,
already.
so, yeah. Well, you know what? How about I'll make the motion till September 1, and we can always adjust that at the August meeting when we have better information. Or how about the motion that we hold off on sending any bills out, and we extend the grace period until the next monthly meeting, and at that time we can extend it again.
Chris, does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah, I think we'll have hopefully a better idea in a month, and then we can always, if we need to, we can even go into unfortunately, the September meeting. But I'm hoping we'll have some more news and more direction in a month from now.
Okay, Councilman Heckert?
I guess my question to Chris is, that this doesn't put us in jeopardy if we're not collecting these fees right up front as we would be normally.
No, and that's a good question. I talked to Fung because I wasn't so sure, but it is only about, I want to say it's only a few percent of our total tax levy. So discussing it with her, she seemed pretty comfortable to be able to wait and a couple months on this if we need to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that. That was going to be my final question. So we need a motion.
Second.
I already made it.
Yeah,
Second
and
the motion.
All right, then vote. Councilman DePasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
aye.
I vote aye. All righty, thank you. And before, discussion and action regarding extending the grace period for payment of first quarter property taxes without penalty or interest. This is more sort of a relief to our taxpayer thing again. Either Kate or Chris, do you want to talk more about this?
Sure. The proposal is to mimic what you did with the fourth quarter of the previous fiscal year. The due date for taxes wouldn't actually change, but instead you'd extend the grace period so people have that extra time to pay without penalty. It's a lot harder for people to actually pay their taxes. They have to pay them online, or they're using the Dropbox, and it's, obviously we're still in a state of emergency and people are still having financial difficulties. So, and the actual cost to the town is very minimal to allow that.
I make a motion to approve.
How long did we extend them last time?
It was for 30 days.
Okay. You're gonna make your motion 30 days, Joe?
Yes.
I'll second that.
All righty, all in favor, Joe, Councilman Pasquale, Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
I vote aye. NB5, approve traffic advisory group recommendation to install no parking sign in the area of Child, Aslan, and Central Street. Do we need some discussion on this? Mr. Rulli, do you want
I
to talk
think
about that?
NB5 and NB6 can be taken together. These were recommendations that the traffic advisory group had made at the last meeting. It was requested that final approval come before the council, and that's why they are reappearing this month.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to combine and approve NB5 and NB6?
So moved.
Well, one question, Mr. DeSisto, is this a codification, our approval?
He's muted.
No, but Tony, you're muted.
Sorry, I hit the mute button, unfortunately. No.
Do we have to be in accordance with the town ordinance?
No, because this is just a signage issue.
But don't they carry enforcement?
On this one, on at least NB6, that's a no because it's for dead end or no entry signage. I'm assuming that the no parking sign in the area of Child, Aslan, and Central Streets is already a no parking area. Am I mistaken?
It was not marked as no parking, but it's just a sightline issue that the members of the traffic commission, looking at pictures and looking at the location, all agreed that there should not be cars parked right at the corner because it inhibited people's ability to see oncoming traffic.
Okay, for NB5, that may need an inclusion on the in the parking ordinance.
Okay.
I'll take a look, and if that's the case, we'll just have it introduced next month.
Anthony, don't we have a requirement already codified so far from the corner you can't park?
I don't think that fits the bill here.
Oh, okay. Because I know that there's actually even, there's laws that say you have to, I think it's 15 foot from the intersection, you can't park or.
That's correct, but I think this goes beyond that.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, so before we clarify what our motion is, there is something I'd like to say about NB6. So that sign already exists that went up last month, the no entry or dead end signage at the corner of Water and Sisson Street. But would it be appropriate to direct the traffic commission, or would that have to happen at another time, to look at putting no entry or dead end signs on all of the streets that are not through streets that travel from Water Street towards the water? So that are not through streets, because I have heard from other people who live down there that it's becoming a more regular occurrence that people think they can cut through to the water or get to Tourister, and they end up not being able to turn around. Like they get, specifically that was happening on Sisson Street. I think it happens on Summer Street. I'm not sure about any of the other streets that dead end that way, or how many of them do, but we might want to address that issue as well. Councilman Heckert?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, because I actually had a couple of constituents who live on the end of Summer Street complain essentially of the same issue, where people think it's a cut through, and there's really nowhere to turn around down there. It's as everyone knows, the north end is tight. And so it seems like you bring up a good point. It would be appropriate to look at dead end streets and treat them the same way as Sisson Street is being treated now. So,
are we going to upset the Water Street community by putting up all of these signs? They're not very visually appealing.
Maybe we can have them.
Historic no turnaround signs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, historically, there is no throughway here. I think the people who live down there might appreciate it.
I will put it on the agenda for the next traffic advisory group to discuss.
Thank you. That's good. So do we need separate motions for NB5 and NB6?
Yes.
Okay. Could we have those, please?
I'll make a motion, we approve NB5 for the no parking sign on Child and Aslan Streets, and also to direct the solicitor to see if we need to codify it further.
I'll second that.
Councilman D. Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
I vote aye. And now we need a motion for NB6.
I'll make a motion, we approve NB6 for the installation of a no entry or dead end sign at the corner of Water and Sisson Streets. And also we direct the town planner to discuss the other dead end streets with the Traffic Commission.
Second that motion.
Councilman D. Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
I vote aye. All righty. Solicitor, request for appointment of the Assistant Municipal Court Judge as acting Housing Court Judge in the absence or disability of the Housing Court Judge and Assistant Housing Court Judge. You just want to explain that quick?
Yes, very rare occurrence. As you know, the municipal court judge and the housing court judge are one and the same. You have assistant judges in each court, so that's 3 judges for the 2 courts. And there is a matter in housing court, it's very rare, but both of the judges on the housing court side need to recuse themselves. However, the assistant municipal court judge is able to sit and hear the case and is willing to do so. So what I'm asking for here is for an appointment of the assistant municipal court judge, that's Brett Bobine, as acting housing court judge in the absence of disability of the housing court judge and the assistant housing court judge. It's a very rare occurrence, but it happened once, it may happen again, and I think it's a good backstop. So I'd ask that you approve this so that you have essentially an assistant housing court judge.
I'll make a motion, we appoint the Assistant Municipal Court Judge as the acting Housing Court Judge in the absence or disability of the Housing Court Judge and Assisting Housing Court Judge.
I'll second it.
Vote. Councilman D. Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Did you have a question, Councilman Kalenda?
I did. Hey, Tony, can we just turn this into an ordinance so we don't ever have to do it again?
Well, I think the resolution is sufficient. The ordinance does not have this, and you can create it.
That's what I mean. Could we create an ordinance just to,
You could, but this is just as effective under the state law too.
we won't have to do this again?
Correct, yes.
Done deal. Thank you.
All righty. Finance Director,
Good evening. Can you hear-
Chance, we have revenues and expenditures.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, you have the June report, but that's not the final report as we continue to receive expenses for the year end. And for this June report, we have small surplus, but it's not guaranteed because we have a whole pay period of payroll to accrue, and we have a few state payments that haven't come in yet. So it's going to be a very close call.
And by close call, what are the risks and what are the solutions?
We may end with a deficit depending on the state payments. I mean, we can book the revenue, but at the same time, the probability of state paying it is still uncertain, so.
And,
Is it a big number, Fung?
yeah,
Just this one alone that I'm looking at the telephone tax, we budget 133,000. So right now we still haven't received it. And meal tax, we're supposed to receive the April in June and they still haven't received yet. So the likelihood of the receipt is still unknown. So, I mean, we can book the receivable and hope that they will pay later. Then we may not be in the deficit, but it's still unknown right now.
Okay.
Well,
is this something that we could be reaching out to our representatives and senator to put a little pressure on? Is there anything we could do to, I don't know if this is a question for Fung or for Kate.
If I could just heard quickly, I'm sorry, on the specifically on the telephone tax, just to give you an update, we received an email, I believe it was yesterday, from the Department of Revenue telling us that they will give us the payment by the statutory deadline. It's my understanding that the statutory deadline is July 30th. Of course, we haven't seen it yet, so that's just what we were told most recently. So I'm hopeful on that one at least, that we should receive it by the end of this month. And then the meals tax is simply a pass-through. So we've received the report, but we haven't actually received the funds. So it would be quite concerning if the state were to hold those funds when they're not intended for state use.
I think the pressure should be put by the five of us. I don't think the manager or Fung should be putting the pressure. I think we should be putting the pressure on our state reps, Rep Speakman, Rep Knight, and Senator Felag.
No, I agree. I wasn't suggesting that they do it. I just asked them if they thought that that was a good next step. I would absolutely, yeah, we can all reach out to them. Councilman Heckert?
Am I hearing this could be quite a few $100,000? Possibly?
More like, if we are in the deficit, it's more like a couple 100,000.
Yeah, a couple $100,000. Yeah, just to get because when I was looking through, I spotted some of those things. The telephone tax stood out clearly as 0 from last year when it was 133. So yeah, there were a few things that stood out, but just to get a feel for this, it's could be a couple $100,000, which is even more reason for us, as John says, to unify here and make that request to our legislators on the state level.
Councilman DePasquale, did you have a comment?
Yeah, as noted, there is a fiduciary deadline, a responsibility here. I feel that the payment will come in, and if not, unfortunately, we'll have to rectify this. It's not deficit spending. We have the money in the general fund. We are healthy. We've prepared ourselves not for a pandemic, but we're not living close on the edge here financially. And unfortunately, there's nothing else we can do. If it comes in, it comes in, which it should. But if not, I do think that the taxpayers, again, I've said this several times, I think, leading up, the taxpayers should feel somewhat confident that we haven't overspent, and it's not deficit spending. There may be a deficit, but we have not created a deficit spending on our actions or the actions of the town. So again, I'm happy that we're in a financially healthy position, and it's quite different than, cutting money out of a budget as we've done in previous years because of the schools where you are in a deficit. So.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. Fung?
Yeah, I just want to say Councilman DePasquale is correct on the deficit part of it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you, Ms. Chan.
You're welcome.
All righty. Any further questions on revenues and expenditures? If not, we can move.
should we support John? I think that was in the form of a motion to send a letter to our delegation and have them work as hard as they can to get the funds that are identified to the town of Warren, the phone tax, whatever else it was. John, that was your intent, correct?
Yeah, that was, I didn't make an official motion, but I will turn that into a motion, yeah.
Well, I second it. Let's send them all a letter and make sure they realize that there's money owed.
In this case, can we draft a letter and it be signed by all of us without violating open meetings as we have just discussed it and voted on it here?
What do you mean?
Well, it wasn't on the docket as discussion and action. That's going to be for the solicitor.
So we would have to reach out to them individually.
It's a direct discussion and action on the
Yeah.
on the agenda item.
It's
Yeah,
just
that's true.
revenues and expenditures.
Right.
I'm asking the question of the solicitor.
Oh,
Okay, are we on, I'm sorry, are we on, still on one, or did we migrate to two, the vision tax upgrade?
We're
statement?
on one.
We're on
We're
one.
still on
Okay,
one.
you can't take a vote on that. That was just a, basically what you just did there is there was a revenue and expenditure. The discussion was fine because it's on revenue and expenditures.
Okay.
No action can be taken at this time.
Can I ask the town council president to write a letter to our local representatives on behalf of the council supporting full payment of what the state owes us?
Yes,
That's what I'll do then.
that's revenue and expenditures, but not a vote.
Correct. That was just a request from me. Please?
I'll do it, I promise.
Okay.
All righty. Number 2 is discussion and action regarding vision tax upgrade statement of work. So Fung, you want to give a quick on the that software, hardware, whatever kind of where it is that we're getting and what it's going to do?
Right, right off the back, Vision is no longer supporting the current version by the end of the year. So we have to upgrade no matter what. And since we're upgrading that, the new feature, the new program has a few enhancement in terms of user-friendly for both on our side and the taxpayer side. And in addition to that, they also have a cloud hosting, so that can alleviate our server space as well too.
Fung, are you happy with their software? Would you prefer to explore other options? There's a bunch of different softwares out there. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with what we have, or do you want to look into exploring other tax options?
On the collection side, I think I'm quite satisfied. I mean, we don't really have hiccups or issues here. But another side of it is an administration, that is the tax assessor side. So I don't know if I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah, I've been very happy with Vision for the tax admin side, and it rolls smoothly to our collection side. We do not use them for the assessing of properties like that software, but we do use it for getting our data over to collections or bills out, and their customer support and response time has been pretty good. Pretty happy with them.
Good.
So we, this is necessary. We need this. We can't work without this, obviously, I'm assuming. And this is the cost factor is appropriate. I mean, I'm looking at, is the total cost $77,500? Is that what I'm getting?
Yes, that's what the contractor quoting us.
And we are budgeted for this?
Yes, that we actually discussed it during the budget process. Is in the capital.
Okay. I'll make a motion, we approve the Vision tax upgrade statement of work. And for the amount of, what was it, 77,500?
500, correct.
$77,500.
I'll second that motion.
A vote. Councilman Di Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you, Fong.
Thank you.
Police Chief. Police Chief Borges, are you here? We have request approval for the purchase of protective ballistic vest level 2 for members of the Warren Police Department not to exceed $21,000 pursuant to master price agreement of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, vendor number 228350 from Armor Express, doing business as AAA Police Supply, to be funded out of allocated capital account 09-019-200032, police ballistic vest replacement. So this has already been approved, but you are now going to spend this. Could you please just explain that the need for updating these vests at this cost?
Muted.
You're muted, Chief.
Chief Borges?
Yes, this is every 5 years per our contract. We have to renew the vests because the fabrics don't work as well. So this has been approved back in fiscal year 2009. Actually, our vests expired in April, but because of the pandemic, we were not able to get that because the factory was not up and running. So we were able to get our offices fitted, and we've waited to place the order.
Okay. I have a question or two. So is there, and I hope the answer is no, has there ever been, has an officer ever received gunfire in Warren?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And so, not that we don't want to keep them as safe and protected as possible, but is there some, what is the benefit to us as far as insurance goes, I believe, in having the vests?
Well, the vest is, like I said, it's only good for 5 years.
Mhm.
So we have to renew the vest. It's a level 2 vest that we have to renew every 5 years because the Kevlar, the fibers and the Kevlar does deteriorate and don't work as well. So per contract, we have to renew our vests.
Okay, so if they never receive any sort of impact to them, they still degrade no matter what?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
I have a question, Chief. How many are we talking about?
I'm doing 18 this time around, even though we budget for a little bit more, but I do have officers who recently, 2018 and 2019, were hired, so I am not buying them vests at this time. But I will need the money to, when the 5 years is up, to replenish that.
Chief, they do have vests. It's just that they're not the 5-year expired, correct?
Correct. Like we just had
Okay.
an officer last July. I'm sorry. Yeah, in October he graduated from the academy, December. So we did buy him a new vest. So
Okay.
I'm not buying one until
Right.
it's 5 years.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that they all have what they need.
They have 4. Everybody has up-to-date vests except 18 of my officers.
Okay.
I did have one more question, Chief. I noticed a level 2 vest. Is there a level 1? Is there a level 3? What's
There is
the
a level
distinction?
3. There's no level 1.
I don't want people using a level 1, but I just asked the question because I noticed it's a level 2 that's being requested. That's all. So that was for the chief, but again, is a level 3 appropriate or necessary, or is 2 is what you're recommending, obviously?
Yeah, we're recommending the level 2 is sufficient for what we're looking for. It does have a front plate And this one also comes with another plate behind it for certain caliber type of weapons could be used against us. So the level 2 is mostly appropriate for everyday use for law enforcement.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Madam President, if I just may, for a moment, real quick. And I know the chief is aware of this. The 5-year number that they're talking about, the manufacturer of the ballistic vest, that's as long as they warranty them for. So whether or not the Kevlar breaks down or not, it's the warranty that comes along with these vests. And Brant, there's actually level 2, 2A, 3, and 3A. And then they get into what your hostage response teams will use. And Chief, on the subject, do you guys have higher ballistic vests that you carry in the cruisers?
We don't have the vest, but we do have ballistic shields
Shields,
that we could use for those serious situations.
Yeah, if I could suggest maybe in the future, looking to outfit each cruiser with one of those higher capacity, either a 3 or a 3A. The chief was right. To my knowledge, I don't recall anyone taking a round into a vest in the town of Warren. But what we did have back in, I don't know if it was just before 1980 or right after, when Sam Elliott was in the car crash, he was wearing his ballistic vest, and that's what saved his life. And it was funny because he took a lot of ridicule as wearing a vest back in the town of Warren back in 1980. And if he didn't have his vest on during that car crash, he would have died, without a doubt. So that's all I have. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, so we have you're welcome. We have a motion, and did we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All righty, Councilman Di Pasquale.
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda,
Aye.
and I. Thank you, Chief Borges. Planning and Community Development. We have discussion and action authorization for the Town Council President to sign an agreement between the New England Environmental Finance Center, University of Southern Maine, and the Town of Warren to provide technical assistance for flood mitigation measures in the area of Warren Boulevard and Central Avenue. This is exciting news. That's problem area. Please tell us about this.
I expound a little bit more on this in the update that I gave you. As we know, we've had continual flooding problems in this area. We have gotten a grant from DEM to address redoing the culvert on the west side of Warren Boulevard down to Main Street. However, it was determined that those funds could not be used to mitigate some of the flooding that we were seeing on the east side of Warren Boulevard and Central Boulevard. So this grant is no cost to us, technical assistance from Jamie Houle, who is at the University of New Hampshire. He heads up their stormwater program through the Southern New England Partnership, which is an EPA-funded program through the University of Southern Maine, and brings in Fussin O'Neill, who is already working with us on the west side, and Wenley Ferguson from Save the Bay. We've already had some initial meetings last week. If we can coordinate these programs together, this will address the long-standing problem that we've had in this area. So this is a good thing. And again, it's at no cost to the town for the technical assistance.
Since I've stood in that water, motion to approve.
Second.
A vote, Councilman Di Pasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Great. Number 2 is discussion and action authorization for the Town Council President to sign a grant agreement in the amount of $400,000 between the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management and the Town of Warren for improvements to Burrs Hill Park and the Town Beach Playground. Tell us about this project.
We had discussed this at previous meetings. We finally have the contract from DEM. This is to add the ADA compliant bathrooms at the Burrs Hill Park, improvements to the playground at the beach, a ADA compliant pathway from the bike path to the beach. This is simply authorization for you, Madam President, to execute the agreement with DEM.
Happy to do so. Glad to have it. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, and I want to go on the record to include and make sure that we include adult swings at the beach with hard seats.
I'll
second that motion.
Yeah, I want to make sure Joe's got something to swing from.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, Councilman De Pasquale, your vote. Councilman Heckert,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda,
Aye.
and I vote aye. And 3 is the update in community, from planning and community development. There's some really great stuff here, good things going on.
Not the only things I'm working on, but some of the more high-profile things that I'm working on that I thought you should be aware of. Happy to answer any questions or comments that you might have on these or any other things that we're working on. I do think it's important with respect to the streetlights that we have the vendor come before us next month because, you know, again, we've got a lot of promises that have been unfulfilled. And I think we need to address those. The rest of it, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, I was just going to say in regard to number 3 there, that will be an agenda item then for the August meeting, bringing PRISM forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the council have any questions for Planner Rulli?
No, I think everything looks good.
Doing a great job, Bob.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I was a little confused by SNEP and SNAP. I had to really look at that a couple of times, Bob.
That's it. You know, we're close to DC now. We're in the world of acronyms, so it's.
Yeah, I was just, I saw it twice.
Protection.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, well, it's good to see some of these longstanding projects moving forward, like the Broken Bridge. That's finally getting to the next step. Warren Boulevard, and then the Metacom Avenue, Southern New England Estuary Protection Grant. That's exciting. And those plans, I think, will bring us forward in a really meaningful way. Thank you very much.
A moment, Madam President. The last that you mentioned, the assistance to look at the Metacom Boulevard and Market Street, the impact of the flooding. And I mean, that's unprecedented that they've ever given a grant for this type of study. So I'm very excited about that. I think that this is something that can be replicated in other parts of the state, but notwithstanding that, I mean, this is going to be very helpful for us as we go through the planning stages of the rezoning potentially of Metacom and then how we address the flooding in the Market Street, Belcher Cove area.
Thank you.
I did have one question, Bob. When I was looking, I mean, this is about flooding, and I get that, but is there any relation to the Metacom Ave corridor study plan that was done years ago? Because some of that was about zoning as well.
Yeah, but they never, I mean, this is more, they really didn't look at what the impacts of how we were treating stormwater and how we were treating some of the environmental consequences of development. And this is taking a little bit more holistic look at how we can be smart about stormwater, and then also how treating stormwater is going to relieve some of the impacts down at a lower elevation in the Market Street area. So, I mean, they looked at it from a pure planning development standpoint, but didn't take into consideration the environmental considerations and the infrastructure pieces.
Understood. Thank you.
But to follow up on Brant's concern, we sat at that table, and I would like to refocus and do whatever needs be, because I've heard that it's the amount of traffic they count, the number of cars, this and that. If that's the case, I'm referring to the turn lane and to the trying to restructure the driving surface on Metacom. I cannot imagine how they use the math of the Bristol Town line meeting the requirement of the cars, and yet in Warren we have 4 lanes, and it's a nightmare to get to the town line where it gets funneled into the 2 lanes with a with a turning lane in the middle. We need to either put that on the agenda, again, have DOT, have everybody and their brother come to the meetings, because it's working beautifully in Bristol. And in Warren, it's still a 4-lane.
The step money is not, and I absolutely agree with you, and we.
No, I know it's a different issue. I know it's a different issue.
But I absolutely agree. I mean, we've had, the most ludicrous explanations from DOT that, we come from Market Street, which is 2 lanes, into Arlington, which becomes 4 lanes. And then it makes absolutely no sense. So we've raised this with DOT. I think as we go through the zoning amendment process, we'll bring DOT in. But what this grant is looking at whatever development we're going to do, how are we can control stormwater, what are the infrastructure improvements we need to make, and what impact is that going to have on other areas of town? But I absolutely agree with you, the DOT issue, they need to be brought to the table.
And I agree with the scope and the detail of this grant. As you're sitting at that table with this scope, bring up the other points, because here we are trying to make Medicum Avenue better for stormwater or relocation of business based on stormwater, and it's still a racetrack.
Absolutely.
I'm
Good
in the motion.
planning. All righty. So does anybody else have anything further to comment? With that, we can move on to the final item of the evening. Fire Chief, discussion and action regarding awarding the bid for the 2006 Ford Crown Victoria sedan and a 1986 C-grade fire apparatus. It would appear that nobody wanted them, but maybe you think you know somebody who does?
Good evening. As you know, the bids did close last Friday. There were no offers, so I'm just looking for council approval to, we have had some interest since. So I'm looking for council approval to accept any offers that come in within reason on those vehicles.
Madam Chair, if I may.
You may.
In our past the past process has been to go out to bid. When the bids are not met, we then have the authority to accept offers. Mr. DeSisto can verify this process. It's been done in the past. I received a phone call today from Mr. Andy Tiska. He wishes to purchase the truck and the car for a total of $5,000. The check is made out to the town of Warren, and he would like to buy them in the condition as is. And that's a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Let's vote on it. Councilman DePasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Hecker,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
I vote aye. Problem solved. Thank you, Andy Tiska.
Yep.
Well, I suppose Chief Souza, you're good with that?
I am. That is the highest offer that we've received today from the interest on both vehicles.
Wonderful. Then we don't need to get into a bidding war. Well, with that, unless somebody has some surprise agenda item, oh, we can't do that. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Third.
Councilman DePasquale,
Aye.
Councilman Hecker,
Aye.
Councilman Hanley,
Aye.
Councilman Kalenda.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Be safe, be well.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Peace.
Good night. Bye,
See
everybody.
you next month. Good night, Joe. Good night, Brant. Good night,
Bye,
Terry. Good
everyone.
night, John. Good night,
Good
Tony.
night.
Good night, Roy. Good night, John Boy.